MCU Weekly, welcome on in. And this week on MCU Weekly, we gotta dive into a ton of different stories. Of course, like we're hot off the Golden Globes, and even though things have really slowed down in Hollywood, and as they should, when something as significant in what is happening right now out there with people's houses burning down and people losing their homes and all their valuables, and like really, it's one thing when you are a celebrity and you maybe have another place to go and stay. There's a lot of people, like way more people, thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of people who are under evacuation orders, as well as just people who have already been evacuated. And and to them, we hope that they're doing well and keeping safe. And if you are out there, then we hope that you have a chance to, of course, find some shelter and take everything that you hold dear with you. Like hopefully you don't have to leave behind anything, because if you're not able to get back to your home, that's just a terrible thought to even think about. I mean, we're on the East Coast here, but we do wish you the very best out in LA. With that said, though, Golden Globes happened. There was a ton of news because Sebastian Stan won an award, and so he was being asked questions about what's going on in the world of the MCU. He's of course still very much a part of the MCU, Thunderbolts, and much more beyond that. Of course, I'm sure he's got stuff going on with other projects like the Avengers movies coming up. He's going to be involved in that. He's of course one of the OGs. He's been in the MCU since like the second or third MCU film with Captain America: The First Avenger, and now he's been talking about Thunderbolts a little bit. So I wanted to kind of bring that to your attention for a second here. To kick things off, Sebastian Stan did say that there's minimum CGI usage in Thunderbolts. Now, he also followed that up by saying we did actual real stunts. Like when you're watching a truck blow up, it's a truck blown up. It's not CGI. Marvel really wanted this to have its own. There were many things in the movie that were actually done practically, and I think that does go a long way. Now, Liz, Marvel is of course infamous for having a tendency to use CGI overly so, where
I
maybe
I was
sometimes
gonna
you
say they
don't
used it
have
all for
to.
Captain America, so that's
Yeah.
why.
But in this
They
instance,
ran
I
out of their
mean,
budget for the year.
but very possibly that might be exactly what happened. But with that in mind, though, Liz, I mean, you look at I mean, I'm sure you've seen the trailers that are out already. There's
Oh,
been like a couple of inside looks. There's been a full trailer, and Thunderbolts looks like much more of that return to the grounded nature of like the Captain America: The Winter Soldier was, even to a certain degree how Captain America: Civil War played out. So they're trying to keep it more down, street level, grounded, and
I mean,
there's a
dare
lot
I say
more
they took a note from
practical. Yeah.
DC and said, "You know what? Let's make it more realistic. Let's make it more practical, real world vibes." Uh, I mean, the Thunderbolts is gritty, right? It's this band of misfits that are forced together for whatever reason, and we'll find out the circumstances when the film comes out. So it makes sense to me that they would use more practical stunts and effects, because it is kind of raw. It is kind of rough around the edges, so I'm excited for it. I think this is going to be great. I can't, you guys know I'm a Marvel stan through and through, so I can't wait for this. I love all of these characters already, and then again, seeing them all come together and how they're going to work with one another, interact with one another. It's I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. I mean, look, this movie feels like it's just a bunch of, super soldiers meeting up together, because
Yeah,
every
that's
other character
yeah.
in this movie is taking the
Well, and
serum.
and it'll
Um,
be interesting to me to see how um what happens with Captain America feeds into that, because the super soldiers are a very big part of Captain America, of the plot line and everything like that. So it'll be interesting to see how one trickles into the other or connects with the other in that regard. But again, two completely different films in the sense like we're talking about, where there's a shit ton of CGI, almost like the most CGI I've ever seen in anything aside from like the Avatar films. And then this one where it's very minimal, and it's the first time they've really done, kind of scaled it back a little bit. So it'll be cool for sure.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like Caleb is saying there, I love the grungy look of Thunderbolts. I too love the grungy. Again, like I said, it's more boots on the ground, street level MCU, which a lot of people, every time you've gotten that, I mean, quite frankly, I think they've never really missed on that level before. And of course, this year we've got Daredevil Born Again coming in, which is the definition of a street level superhero in the MCU, especially. And then even with Captain America Brave New World, it's it feels like part of the movie will have more of the fantastical with once the Red Hulk gets involved. but by and large, outside of that, they're trying to make it a political thriller. So at the MCU this year, the theme seems to be, well, again, then you do have the exception to the rule with Fantastic Four, which is gonna be,
Right.
much like the
That'll be
title, much
CGI
more
heavy. Yeah.
fantastical.
Yeah.
And but even then, their approach to that takes, a very different look with them being astronauts, a very retro feel. So in some ways grounded, but obviously they'll have a lot more CGI. Like the Thing is going to be entirely CGI. Whereas when you look at the cast of characters in this movie for Thunderbolts, none of the characters will be CGI. There's barely any, element of these characters' costumes. Even for the Ghost, it looks like the mask is being done practically. Whereas I felt like some parts of those costumes, like the mask and stuff, was CGI, and even the Ant-Man movies when where she was introduced. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm interested in this. The big thing about this movie is going to be, of course, when you're doing an ensemble, the chemistry is what matters the most. And it's gonna draw comparison to Suicide Squad. The whole, what are we, some kind of Thunderbolts? I still don't know how, they get to come up with the name Thunderbolts, because in the trailer they've hinted at it. Oh yeah, we're gonna call ourselves the Thunderbolts. Like, we're not calling ourselves the Thunderbolts. I'm like, I don't even know why Red Guardian would do that. Like, it's because Thunderbolt Ross doesn't seem to
Because
be involved in any of the
because he's
trailers.
he's got,
So
that's what he does. He comes up with funky names for things and
But yeah, but I mean, the logic to me,
blessed.
there's a bit of a gap as to like how this connects to Thunderbolt Ross. But given that this movie comes out after Captain America 4, maybe there'll be a connection there based on how that movie ends.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this. I like the anytime you can do stuff more practically. Look, as far as CGI has come along today, and there's a lot of sequences I bet you have seen in a movie where you didn't even realize there was CGI stuff in there. It's still, when you're trying to make a movie of this scale, and certainly when Marvel cranks them out the way that they do, sometimes if you have a very heavy lean on the CGI, you could end up with things like, just badly rendered helmets on Thor or stuff like that, where you could clearly tell it's CGI. And this is the thing: great CGI is invisible to the eye. Like, you
Yep.
won't notice it, and therefore you won't worry about it. The bad CGI that we always talk about is the stuff that we notice, and hopefully in a movie where they're supposedly doing a lot more real stunts and things more practically, you won't notice any bad CGI. Now, of course, he can, Sebastian Stan did also kind of mention a little bit more about like the value of doing it this way, and why it matters so much, because he said, hey, not only did we do real stunts, when you're watching a truck blow up, it's not CGI, and that Marvel wanted to have its own practical feel to it. He said that it matters because it goes a long way with the fans. Like, people are smart. They, the audiences, they know when they're watching something that is practical versus CGI. And here's the thing, that's true to a certain degree, because in
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick, a lot of those jets that are meant to be those F-18s, those F-18s in a lot of the sequences were not actually F-18s. They were different kind of fighter that's used mostly for training in the Navy, and then they
Right.
replaced them with CGI, F-18s. But because they had such good reference footage of the actual F-18s, and they were able to replicate the lighting, the texturing, and all of that, the movement, and the way the motion blur, and all the different artifacts of the cameras, like, happened because they had footage of the actual thing. They were able to replicate the CGI in a way where most of us couldn't tell it was like, and to the point where they marketed it as practical, effects, even though there was a shit ton of CGI in that movie. Um, I think with Thunderbolts, it's another example. I think Sebastian Stan knows that we, as humans, we can tell. It's very easy for us to realize
Yeah.
when there's an uncanny valley, and
Well,
we do not want to
I
traverse that for the next movie.
I would say yes and no, because so many studios are using volume now as well, and volume has
Yeah,
completely changed the game. Not only for the actors themselves feeling completely immersed in this world, they're not looking at a green screen, they're not working off dots. They are using actual like atmosphere. They are enveloped in this world.
yeah,
So on the one hand, I mean, to Sebastian's point, it like, and even James Gunn has said this as well. When you can use it practically and it makes sense for what you're doing, by all means, you should always, stick to the tried and true.
yeah.
But if you have to do a little extra on the side, you throw in some special effects, you use volume, you use CGI, what have you, then, if it makes sense to do it there, sometimes you have to do it there. Is it a way of cutting corners? Not necessarily, but I agree that yeah, audiences I mean, we know what's real and what's not real at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You understand? But again, in this particular setting, it's such a gritty, raw kind of film, kind of tone to the whole thing. So practical effects makes tons of sense to me, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it as well. I think all of the three movies this year that Marvel has coming out in the MCU, they each have a unique appeal to them because they
Yeah,
each are trying to tackle a different part of the universe. In fact, a lot of them are trying to answer questions that many of us have been asking for the longest time. Fantastic Four is like the first really significant set of characters that Disney acquired from Fox, and bringing back into the House of Marvel. Then, of course, with Thunderbolts, you're getting these unknown commodities. Not unknown commodities, I shouldn't say that. It's more a lot of these characters we just haven't, seen, featured in their own movie. They haven't basically been, at the top of the line. It's they've been supporting characters, but now
yeah,
can they pool together and really make some magic happen? Because you have a character like Red Guardian who's very underrated and I felt like underutilized in Black Widow, but even in the limited role that he became like a fan favorite to the point where
yeah.
now they
It was a
know.
good it was a good introduction to that character,
Yes.
but I am glad that they
Yeah.
brought him back to so we can kind of flesh him out a little more. But also, we said in the very beginning, I was kind of brushing off Thunderbolts, but I
Hmm.
keep saying to you guys, until there's a trailer, I cannot give you my
Yeah.
opinion. So now that the trailer has come out, I am so very much looking forward to this. I really can't wait. And again, to see how Captain America connects to it, because again, you guys know I'm not really looking forward to seeing Captain America. I'll see it, but just to kind of get the ball rolling for the
Yeah.
projects in 2025. And again, Fantastic Four, same thing. I really can't say much about it until they give me something to look at and to
Yeah.
judge. I'm all for it. I'm all in for Thunderbolts for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And like I said, it's not only just, Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four that are, have very unique challenges in front of them, but also problems and that are they're in a manner of speaking solving for the MCU. Captain America 4 is trying to solve a pretty big problem that is of course the Eternal in the middle of the ocean. And
Yeah,
then beyond that, you've got the whole reshoot situation. And speaking of the reshoots,
yeah.
one of the wrestlers, one
Also,
of the
quick thing I wanted to
yeah.
mention before we moved on. I love how in this day and age, making movies not on a green screen has now fucking become like a thing to sell your movie. Ah,
Yeah,
yes, making a movie on like in like an actual house
yeah.
or on like the actual desert. That's like a selling
Well,
point now.
but even directors have been
Shooting shit practically should not be a selling point. That
But
should
It's
even
just
just
directors
it's
be
just
have
the
been
way
like
talking
trends
about
go,
that
man.
too. Directors have been bringing that up too. One of the directors in his Golden Globe speech said, everybody thought I was crazy for shooting on 70 millimeter. This is a
Jenna
constant thing.
Ortega was saying it on Beetlejuice. She was like, "Oh yeah, we shot in like real places." It's like, wow, crazy. We were only doing that for 100 years
Well, because
until fucking this
technology
shit
keeps
took over.
advancing and everybody wants to use the new shiny toy. So we
I don't
get
know.
hung up on the new and oh look what I can do with this and look what I can do with that. So when you do go back to the basics, it is newsworthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, speaking of newsworthy, of course, Seth Rollins, who you might know him from the WWE. I, of course, know him from WWE. He's been with the company for a long time. He's one of the best wrestlers around today. And as a multi-time world champion, he's also ventured into doing some acting work. And he was
Yeah.
meant to be part of Captain America: Brave New World, but according to him now, it looks like because of all the reshoots, as far as he's aware, a lot of his role has either been completely cut out or most of it has been erased.
Like,
So
he came in, read for stuff, and
yeah,
then it got cut out, or did he actually, or is he
no,
saying he filmed stuff?
It
no,
sounds
no,
like he's
no.
saying he filmed.
Yeah, exactly. He was in there. Like, so
Okay.
the quote is the script went through a lot of rewrites and reshoots. So what I was there to do, essentially, my role got either repurposed or completely erased. So
It
it
is
looks
still
like
kind of vague, but okay, I
it's a
get what you're
little
saying.
vague, but I think the implication is he did shoot some stuff, and it looks like some of that might have been either minimized or erased. But you know what? I bet you he's not the only one who that happened to. It might have happened to a
Oh
bunch of
yeah,
other actors and characters as
sure.
well. But look, though this poster gives me Red October vibes, and just kind of like an old school Jack Ryan movie. And if that's what they're
Yeah.
going for,
Yeah, they're
I
they're
do.
definitely going like for full military vibes. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
but like like all the missiles flying up, it looks like basically it pretty much a Jack Ryan movie from the 90s or the 80s or the
Yeah, except
90s.
not good.
Well, but hey, I appreciate the artwork. If you
It's good
can
artwork.
remind me of the Hunt for Red October, then I'm like, okay, you're doing something right. Even though that wasn't a Harrison Ford Jack Ryan movie, of course he did a few of
That
them
was
himself.
Alec Baldwin
That was an
before,
Alec
he
Baldwin.
got his
Yeah.
shot.
Tadum Tish. Thank you. Well, with that in mind, let's keep the ball rolling here. This is
Keep
like
the ball Seth rolling. There it is.
yes,
Anyway.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
You're full of
Alright.
good puns today, or bad
Good
puns.
pun.
No,
Good
good
puns.
puns.
Full of puns. We're
Um,
full of puns.
well, this news comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter, and I felt this was significant because you've been talking about Craven. Recently, we have always come up with different kinds of names for potential Morbius sequels, and of course, the terrible responsibility, great power, blah 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 line from Madam Web and Venom. You mentioned just the day ago, John, that the Venom VFX somehow looked better in Spider-Man 3 than they did in any of the three Venom movies. I would like to say, technically speaking, that's not entirely true, but I also understand where you're coming from. Now, with that in mind, Palak Patel has now left Sony, and he was basically the one responsible, the executive responsible for the Sony Spider-Man spin-off movies, and then he also served as the studio's point man for the MCU Spider-Man films. So now that they're not around anymore, um, I gotta ask you guys, like, is this the pivot that they were looking for? Because
I
we
hope
know that
so.
they're gonna put a pause on this whole, you know, universe that they were trying to create, even though the movies really didn't connect, because they
Yeah.
wanted to do better quality control. And a lot of times when you have a problem that feels systemic, it usually is trickling down from the very top. So if Paul Patel was the one in charge of all of these movies, then do you think removing him first is the necessary step that you need in order to improve the quality of these movies? Or do you think this is just, step one of many to come because there's obviously it's not just one person who made all these terrible films. All the directors, the writers, and everything.
I
The
mean, because I
people they
think it's Amy
hired.
Pascal. She's really the reason why.
Yeah, but like
I
Liz,
mean,
what do
it's a
you think about
start.
this?
It's a
Yeah, it's a
start,
start.
and hopefully it's a shakeup that they need that will, make them see the light and make some better decisions and make some changes on how they approach things. But I'll still see their stuff. Madam Web for me was still one of the worst things I've ever seen. And that, and it was so disappointing. But the other projects that, again, I didn't hate Craven. I didn't even hate Morbius. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. Well, hello to Caleb in the not Caleb. Let me get back to the
Well, yeah,
group chat
Caleb
here.
too. Hi, Caleb.
Well, hello, Caleb. You are still in the chat. Thanks for sticking around.
Morbius
Caleb.
versus God versus me.
By the way, Caleb's saying, "How can you cast Seth Rollins and not use him? What a mistake." I'm sure he's in there somewhere, but he just doesn't have as big of a role as he was originally gonna have. Now,
I will say, Madam Web isn't like. I will say, at least with Madam Web, it's laughably bad. Like it's
yeah.
fun. Like
I heard
him
that
getting
people were
killed by
like,
Pepsi
Craven
sign.
is
That's
just bad. Like it's.
Craven's way better than Madam Web.
Craven's far
Is
better
it?
than Madam Web.
For me,
Madam Web
I've seen
personally,
people
is
say
this
like
is
it's
cringe
worse.
this
for
is
2
how I
hours.
would rate the Spider-Verse films. Thank you, Caleb. Is the worst is easily Venom Let There Be Carnage because it's the closest to like being actually really bad. It's just like it doesn't have a lot of entertainment value, and they fuck up Carnage. They waste Woody Harrelson. They waste Naomi Harris. They
Very
waste all these
disappointing, that
great
movie.
actors.
Yeah.
They waste a good director. They like how the heck you wasted Gollum directing your movie. Fuck you guys. So it does have some decent parts here and there, but it's mostly forgettable and pretty bad. Then I would say Madam Web. Again, this is where it gets like so bad it's good. Where
So
it's just like,
it's
It's the
her
so
getting
sweet spot.
blinded by a
It's the
firework.
Batman and Robin's
no, it's
zone.
Her getting
oh,
blinded by a firework, him getting killed by Pepsi sign, ADR, the lack of like respect for anything comic book related, Adam Scott being there, he's fun, And it's just like, yeah, it's a very weird movie. I had fun with it. It's not good, but I had fun with it. Same with Morbin Time. Like it's fun. It's stupid. And also, there's a great video reviewer. I don't remember his name. He doesn't really make videos that much anymore, but he had a really good Morbius review. I think the channel name is Absolute Unit. He's really funny. Like I would look up their he like the thing is he takes the form of like a VTuber, but he talks like a Brooklyn plumber. So it like the voice doesn't it's really funny. And his purely on their review of Morbius makes Morbius number 4 for me. But even then, you had Matt Smith who was great. Like you had Matt Smith doing a Bully Maguire dance. That's just perfection right there. And then, Jared Leto, Honka Honka, perfect, amazingly bad. And then yeah, it's just like again, it's like having those like really bad moments, but it's still being really funny. And then I would say then Craven, then Venom Last Dance, and then the best one is Venom. Like I would say Craven, Venom Last Dance, and Venom are the closest to being really good movies. But like I would say Craven and Venom Last Dance are decent. Venom is the closest to being like an actually good movie. So that's just what I think.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of, Null being introduced, but then they sort of really only gave us a glimpse and didn't really go very far with it. I think a lot of people were disappointed we didn't get more of it because they kind of teased that he would have a bigger role in the movie than he ultimately ended up having. So, and the idea of like having Null kind of come to the MCU, maybe they do cross them over for the Secret Wars, crossover. It's like I remember when back in the day, Amy Pascal would be like, "Oh yes, we're gonna cross these characters over and everything." And like Kevin Feige sitting next to her is like smiling, like, "Yeah, totally, we are, Amy. That's exactly what we talked about." He just doesn't say anything. It's just hilarious. But hey, the story is that Palak Patel, who was in charge of the Sony Spider-Man spin-offs, and of course was a point man also for the MCU Spider-Man films. So I guess on that front they did really well, but then on the Sony Spider-Man spin-offs they really, missed a lot more than they hit. Well, they're gone now. So hopefully that means that there's going to be some more, grand overall just systemic structural changes with how they approach these movies. They would focus more on quality. And, look, ultimately they weren't that far off the mark in some ways. Craven, Aaron Taylor Johnson, great actor, almost a perfect casting, and he certainly gave it his best. The movie didn't suck because he didn't try hard enough. Like, Tom Hardy is probably the best Venom we've ever seen in live action. So, and even like, I mean, Jared Leto's an Academy Award winning actor. And Dakota Johnson, you may not love all of her movies, but she's also very,
she
very
was
talented.
in 50 Shades of Grey, but we all make mistakes.
Which one's a mistake, though?
But hey, look, I'm just saying, they're not that far off the mark.
Her entire career is a mistake.
Thank you, great. But look, hopefully Sony can flip the script, and then when they do start making more of these projects, of course they do have a Spider-Man Noir currently in production, but when we get more movies from the cinematic universe that they're setting up adjacent to the MCU, hopefully it will be better, and the movies will be better, the stories that they're telling will be better, the scripts will be better, the dialogue will be better. The VFX in all of these movies have been pretty good. I don't think they've missed on that front. So the casting has been great. They just are bad movies, like in terms of stories and dialogue. So yes, that needs improvement, and it starts at the top, and that seems to be where that's where the purge begins over at Sony. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit more about some speculation, a rumor, if as it were, because it is a rumor. It's coming from Cryptic 4K Qual on X. And the rumor is that there have been talks about a Hulk versus Wolverine movie. Now, they are saying that it's way more likely that this is going to happen during the Mutant Saga. Now, we do know there's a couple of untitled movie placeholders on the Marvel schedule for the next few years. So people might wonder that maybe one of those untitled, dates gets filled in with a Hulk versus Wolverine movie. We did get that little sequence in Deadpool and Wolverine where, he's jumping to the different timelines, and you see the Wolverine that fights the Hulk, which is like very much, they're trying to replicate the comic book cover there. So we have seen a glimpse of maybe how they might want to do it, but I don't know if ultimately when they do this, and it's chances are if you're gonna have a Hulk and Wolverine in the MCU moving forward, most likely you're gonna want to have this confrontation happen, and then why not do it as an entire movie? But I doubt that it's gonna include, the current actors playing the roles. I don't think Hugh Jackman is going to be a Wolverine at that point. I don't
Hopefully not.
believe Mark Ruffalo is gonna be still the Hulk. But Liz, what do
Hopefully
you think
not.
about the idea of doing a Hulk versus Wolverine movie in the MCU, and the idea that they might, have that be one of the movies in the mutant saga after Secret Wars?
No, I'm for it, but I also agree, as much as I love Hugh Jackman and I appreciate all that he's done for the franchise, and Mark Ruffalo as well. Mark Ruffalo is hands down my favorite iteration of Hulk. Um, I'm I'm tired of seeing those boys. I don't think they can do it anymore. I don't think they should be doing it anymore. So if that happens, I wonder, is it going to be animated? Because I think it's too soon to recast at this point. I think the fans would mutiny, but at the same time, I really don't see them taking this on, especially because it seems like it's a very action heavy story. So it'll be
I don't know
interesting to
how
see
you
what
would do this for
happens.
fucking 2 hours.
Right.
So
Well, we
Well,
certainly don't want another
it's
Batman versus Superman situation.
exactly.
Please.
Wolverine hits him with a sink just for no
yeah,
Right.
reason.
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. And then
If
we come to find out that both of their mothers have the same name. So
yeah,
now we can shake
yeah,
hands and be friends.
yeah.
Please. Anyway.
Yeah, Logan's
Um,
gonna be like, if there's a 1% chance, we have to take that as an absolute certainty, and then
Because I
he's
don't
gonna go
understand how
fight Hulk.
math works.
right. But and then so also how far down the line are we talking? Like what year are we saying that this is possibly going to happen? Is because I feel like the timeline is a big factor here as well. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, again, it's Marvel. I'll watch it. I'm always interested in hearing new stories and new iterations, but I don't see Hugh Jackman or Mark Ruffalo coming back for this. And I think we're at a point where it's time to recast. But again, not within this year, certainly it's a little too soon. So at the very least, I would say let's make it animated. You could bring the guys back for voice acting, fine. But I think it would
Or just bring in
for
Cal
right
Dot
now.
again.
Well, I just think for right now, the best play would be to make it animated if they are going to move forward with this project. But we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, by the way, Hugo Millie stepped away from the show earlier, and they're back, and it looks like they saw Creature Commandos, the finale. So like, thank you for stopping by again, and it looks like you had fun with it. So did John and Liz, and we really appreciate that you are here with us. Now we're talking Marvel, so Caleb's suggesting, Liz, that if you could potentially do this as a special presentation, maybe.
Sure.
Now I will say though, like Kevin Feige mentioned this not too long ago, that they're kind of done with the special presentation idea, that they did those, a few of them, but now moving forward they're gonna stick to like doing like limited
John.
series and movies.
Yeah,
So
because the fucking shows, the ones where like one has been actually critically praised, yet every special presentation you did were all praised. Yeah, let's stop doing the thing that like where all of them worked, and let's keep doing the thing where almost none of them have worked. That totally makes sense. Yeah. Just
fair
like
enough.
Kevin
I had the
Feige,
same
he came with
reaction.
great
I was like,
ideas.
Yeah.
why, like, because why abandon the idea of doing these one-off specials? They work so well. Literally, like you said, every single one of the ones that they produced were done well.
The
They had
holiday
something unique to
Well,
special,
offer.
again,
Werewolf by
It's
because they're so
Night.
hung up. No, again, because they're so hung up on everything has to connect. Everything has to be eventually fall back to the same universe. So I don't agree. I
like
also
why?
don't agree. I think I don't know why they're doing the things that they're doing, but
But I mean,
that
even most of those one-offs like were part of the MCU, right? Like
yeah.
the Werewolf by Night exists within the main MCU timeline. It's just we don't know what, where, and what time, and blah blah blah.
It's like
But
it got people excited for
yeah.
fucking Man Thing. Like people are excited to see Man Thing again. Like, guys, come on. Like, there's no way you could have done that with anything else, and they did it. Like,
Yeah.
what? And
Well,
then people like
speaking,
Kevin Bacon coming in for the Guardians holiday
dude, Kevin
special.
Bacon playing Kevin Bacon, that was one of the best things I've seen Marvel
That
It's
do in
was
the
like
last
pretty
few
great.
everybody loved those, and then meanwhile,
years.
like
Yeah.
half of like the fucking shows have sucked. Like from like critical and like audience are like, yeah, these are like, I think the only ones I've heard like a lot of praise for are like Hawkeye, maybe Moon Knight, and maybe Miss Marvel. The rest, like,
I mean, Loki's pretty great, but I mean,
Even with
Yeah.
second season, I've heard let it. Again,
Yeah.
I can't
Well,
judge. I can't judge, so I
but
don't
it's
know. I'm
also
just going off
yeah.
what other people have said.
Well, it's also hard to have a second season when one of your main castmates gets arrested and thrown off the project and you have to
Whoopsie
completely,
daisies.
you know, do bad things happen. But
Yep.
I mean, but they're gonna like, but keep making what ifs and make Marvel zombies, and
Don't
I
make
just
what
I
if.
don't.
Don't make
But
more
that's
what
my
if.
point. That's what I'm saying. I was being sarcastic, but
Oh, okay.
that's my that's my point. This is what I don't understand. Like to what you said, John.
Like
Why are you
I
sticking with things that nobody
the
likes?
things that don't work because like I've seen like so many people like being like, why are you fucking going on with like what if was kind of a neat idea and it could have been a
Yeah,
really
the
good
one
idea.
off. Yeah, but for there to
But it's
be
like
three
it kept
seasons of
going,
it
and people
already,
are
like
I haven't seen one I mean, I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there are people that like the show, but I have from what I have seen, I have not
no.
seen a single person praise the last 2 seasons of What If.
No, because their background, if anything, like, and that's what I did with season one. I was like, oh, this is interesting, but I kept it on in the background. It certainly wasn't anything that captured my attention or
And the
made me like
fucking like
rethink my
it's
feelings
like
on Marvel.
this is
I don't get.
coming
I don't.
from
There's no point.
Disney. Why
Yeah,
does their animation suck dick? This is literally the
they're
cornerstone
trying
of like
cool new
animation
things,
and
man. They
film,
gotta
and
try
it's
cool
just like
shit.
it's
They gotta be artsy
guys,
with it. They gotta be
this
different. They gotta be
shit looks
unique.
worse than the straight to fucking like Disney sequels. Like, what is going on
Like, how
here?
do you have like lens flares in animation? But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
God,
You know.
God, Young Justice had the budget of a ham sandwich for
I
their
mean, I think
latest
it's meant to
seasons,
look
and it
pretty.
looked better than this shit. Like, Jesus
But
fucking Christ.
well, speaking of, Disney Plus Marvel TV shows, I mean, they might
Oh
be done
boy,
with the one-offs, but they do still have more TV shows coming, one of which is
unfortunately.
Ironheart, and it looks like, according to
Oh
Marvel
wow,
updates,
cool. Don't care.
No one's gonna
the
watch it.
No
the
one's gonna
first
watch
trailer
I'm
this
is coming in
shit.
sorry to
April.
say, no one's gonna watch it.
Well,
Nobody
I'm
likes
just look,
Riri Williams. Nobody. Nobody likes this character.
it's
Why are
hot.
you
Look,
doing
this is
this?
the thing. Her character so far, I felt like was just rammed into the second Black Panther movie and
Yep,
didn't really need to be there. Like
and
if
she's
that
pretty
character didn't
That's what I
exist,
obnoxious.
heard.
I understand that they kind of put her in they kind of made her the reason why Namor and Atlantis like come to blows with
Oh, cool.
Wakanda,
So,
but
so she started a war. That's great.
well, but like no, it's more so the technology that she
Accidentally,
has. It's
accidentally.
accidentally, yes. But I'm saying you could have written a way more interesting version of that story that could have, had a
Yep,
more direct conflict between the two nations. That would
yep,
have felt a lot stronger than what they did, which is one of the reasons why I thought it was an inferior movie to the first one, where literally the first movie, the first Black Panther, it tests who Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa is as a man and his values.
But I mean,
It
there was
forces him
only
to
so much
question
you
his
could
own
do with
values.
your star
I
dying, so
know,
they
I
couldn't
know that, but
really.
I'm saying, but like, this is where I personally am one of the people who's like they should have recast him there, in which we'll have a longer conversation about that in a little bit. But but with that said, even if with going in the direction that they did, I feel like Riri Williams was maybe not the best way to make that story work. But nonetheless, they made the decision. She's part of the MCU,
Yeah,
and look, here's the thing. What I was trying to say earlier is while her character so far has not amounted to something that someone that a lot of people love necessarily,
right.
she is still has the potential to grow into a character that we love. And
Yeah,
look, if they do this show well, I'm gonna walk away from the show being like, you know what, Riri Williams Ironheart is probably one of the best new additions to the MCU. I'm so glad I watched the show, and yes, I
they're
want to see
not.
more of her.
But the problem is they're not going to do it but through through a show. If they threw her in another film, if they made her an important piece of another movie that hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people are going to see, when you put stuff automatically on a TV show that's so limited your audience, it's not. They don't care about this character. They're not trying to build up this character. They're not trying to bring this character into the fold. It's just another cash grab,
show.
which is the majority
What
of their
does
shows. So
that even
it's
mean?
not. It's a real shame because they could be putting value on these side characters like James Gunn is now doing with DC, and
Yeah.
instead they're just kind of like, oh, we gave them their 5 minutes. That's what's going on, and it's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, but you know what? Here in this instance, they're gonna give her her entire show. an entire series just focus on her. And of course, I think Anthony Ramos is part of this, right? Like he's one of the
I mean, the
antagonists in
G.I.
the
Joe
show.
crossover ain't happening anymore, so he's
He's
got to go
gonna
to Marvel now.
Well, I mean, he signed up for this project, while he was working on that previous Transformers movie. So, regardless of whether they Lorenzo Di Bonaventura, like regardless of whether they figure that shit out over at Paramount or not, he's gonna be part of the MCU.
No,
And look, we
Hasbro said
haven't
they're
gotten
not
a
doing
trailer
any
for
more,
this yet, but the trailer is coming in
Right.
April, and it's gonna pretty much line up right around when I think Daredevil Born Again is probably either in mid-release or is just about to finish releasing. Because look,
Yeah,
Marvel has like 9
the
different
show
things going
that
on this
people
year.
actually care about.
It was like I think Fandango's either Fandango or IMDb's most anticipated show of the year, which surprised me. But anyway, yeah, Ironheart. I'm just saying, give it a shot. If you wouldn't if you hate it after the first couple episodes, you can always put it away. But I have a feeling that if they hit this right, all of us, because the thing is, everybody wants an Iron Man in the MCU, and I know nobody's gonna replace Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, but Riri Williams could potentially be just as endearing of a character and then go in a new direction. And so far, we have
Mm,
seen so many other iterations of like, oh, an iron suit here, an iron suit there. I want a definitive version that kind of carries the torch forward. So for me, I'm gonna give it a shot. Given the hit rate of MCU shows on Disney Plus, chances are the show will be mediocre and probably just mid. But
yep.
nonetheless, I'm like, why not give it a shot and see if it turns out to be anything good? And if it does, there's you got nothing to lose, right? Like I'm excited to at least see the premiere and maybe the first couple episodes. I'll give it that much of a runway. But hey, now we got to talk about our big stories of the day in MCU Weekly. Of course, there are two big ones. The first one I'll start off with is the fact that hey, you know what? Wicked is still making bank at the box office, even though
Yeah,
it's now out on digital, so
my
you can
parents tried to go
watch it at
today, and it's
home.
still sold out.
It is, dude. It's crazy. I mean, you can now rent it at home and watch it on your TV, but you can still, of course, see it in a movie theater. And we know there's a sequel coming out later this year. We know it's getting
For
nominated for
good.
tons of awards already, much like the Penguins. So with that in mind, Cynthia Erivo, the lead of the movie, she has got her eyes set on a potential Marvel character, and of course, we're talking about Storm. So Storm is, key part of the X-Men, and so Cynthia Erivo wants to play Storm in the MCU. Do you believe, Liz, that this is something where she's just sort of expressing interest, or do you think there's more to it than that? That maybe behind the scenes more conversations have been had, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get introduced to Cynthia Erivo's Storm in, let's say, I don't know, Secret Wars. Is it
I
possible?
mean, I'm for it any way we can get it. I think she's a wonderful actress. I and I say this without trying to be an asshole, but I hope she doesn't sing because there's no fucking need for it. I will say that's one thing that absolutely fucking drives me crazy. Like Zoe Deschanel apparently can't do a single fucking project without singing because she's a singer. In the majority of the things that I've seen Cynthia in, she sings no matter what. And I'm there's no need for it, there's no need for it. Like Aurora's never, not Aurora, excuse me, but she's never broken out in song in the like in any iteration of Storm before. So just because we have she's talented in that way doesn't mean that's what we need. That's the very
Yeah.
first thing I thought of. Like, yeah, she could do it. She's got the look, she's got the acting chops, absolutely, but she better not fucking land a single note because that's completely ridiculous. So that's really my only feeling on it. Whether or not they're already in talks, I'm sure they are. I mean, she's a big deal right now. She you can't get any bigger than her at the moment.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't surprise me if they weren't already. Uh, but again, she could just be like Alan Richardson, just throwing it out there and just saying, "Hey, I'm
I shout
here.
it off the
I'm
rooftops.
interested." Yeah. So well, like again, it'd be great, but she has no reason to sing, so that's
Yeah, I
really
do.
my only
Well,
feeling on
eh,
it.
I agree with you. I don't think, we need a storm that breaks out into song while she's commanding the storm clouds above
No.
us. Like, it doesn't need to be the case. But the fact that she wants to do this, of course, she mentioned this at the National Board of Review, and the quote from her was because she was asked, like, hey, what is a dream role that you would like to maybe manifest? And she said, I really want to play Storm. I know it sounds frivolous, but I think, what a word, but I think we haven't uncovered how grand she is and all of the inner turmoil that she has. Now, of course, Marvel Studios has been gradually introducing us to the X-Men already. We have gotten the hint that hey, Miss Marvel is a mutant. We have seen, the Kelsey Grammer version of Beast and what was it, the Marvels. And of course, we know that the Kevin Feige has said after the multiverse saga ends, we're going into the mutant saga. And with that in mind, I mean, John, do you think it's realistic that if a character, if an actor of the caliber and certainly right now the star power of Cynthia Erivo, if she says publicly enough that hey, I want to manifest myself playing Storm, is Kevin Feige listening? Do you think this is even be a good idea potentially if she was cast as his Storm in the new era of the MCU?
I don't. It's tough because I think with X-Men and all those characters, what you need more so than anything is the chemistry between characters. And that's because that's what made the original films work so well.
Yeah.
Like the between Hugh Jackman and James Marsden and Famke Janssen and Halle Berry, the chemistry between those characters was near perfect. And that's what made those movies work so well. And I think that's the thing they should be going for. Now, if Cynthia Erivo can do that, then awesome. Great. Let's go. Then I'd say go for it. But in terms of X-Men, I would prefer that they go with more smaller known actors. Like I know because there's like, oh, cast fucking like Daniel Radcliffe as Wolverine, and it's like, no, let's not do that. Let's like go with like a smaller like actor who's like who can fit really well into the mold of what they want to do, and it should be an ensemble of like kind of known names, maybe up and comers, but let's not get like fucking Timothy Chalamet for Cyclops. It's like let's not do that. So I think now with Wicked, Cynthia Erivo was always like a really good talent. And I would say if this was prior to Wicked, I would say more so definitely. But
Yeah.
now that she's exploded as pretty much this well-known name because of this movie, I think that's less likely. And I don't think that that's what Marvel wants to do in regards to something that's more ensemble based like the X-Men.
You know what? I hear you on all those fronts, but she herself is like, this is a dream role I want to manifest. I'm like, if she
And
says
but
I
the
want
thing
to
is,
do
again,
this,
I always say this: if it's tomorrow, Kevin Feige is like, you know what, Cynthia, I agree with you. You're cast as Storm. Am I gonna complain? Fuck no, I'm not gonna complain because I think she could do it, and I think she could do it really fucking well. It's just I think what they should be focusing on is not getting every A-lister and not getting every like everything that they want to do. No.
Well, but
Um
that'll also be a problem too,
I wouldn't
right? So
mind
if
it.
if she's if she's the biggest name they have, then it becomes all about her and all
exactly.
about Storm,
No, but
regardless of the storyline. So
It's
it's a
it's a
tricky
tricky thing
kind
to
of
like,
balance to have.
I
but
Yeah.
I
it's just
hear
like you
you
need an
guys.
ensemble that works well together
Well,
and they
because
should
the original
focus on
X-Men
that.
cast, with the exception of Sir Patrick Stewart, were essentially all unknowns at the
No,
time.
well, but look, Famke Jensen had already been a Bond girl. She was fairly well
She
known.
was she was a Bond girl. That she was a
I,
Bond girl. Like it's not that's not significant at all.
It's
Not
fair
at
though.
all.
Like a lot of the other, you are right. A lot of the other cast members weren't as well known. I mean, of course, Ian McKellen was very well known. So there were definitely a couple of actors in there that kind of buoyed,
Like you had
like as far
older
as name
legends
recognition
that were
goes.
known.
Yeah.
But
Right.
James
But look,
Marsden
this
was
is
kind of
Marvel doing
known.
it.
Famke Jensen was kind of known.
But
Fucking
again,
Hugh
not
Jackman
not on this
definitely wasn't
level.
known.
Wasn't known.
But
Yeah.
yeah, not
No,
on this level
not on this
is my
level.
point.
That's what I'm
Is my
saying.
point.
I'm just saying it could work, especially look, this is almost like a story that connects to the next story because think about it. In the comics, Storm and T'Challa have a pretty close relationship. I feel like if they were to recast the role of T'Challa after having killed the character off in the movies, so that they didn't want to recast him at the time with Chadwick Boseman's passing. I'm just thinking if you bring in a T'Challa now in the MCU, it's probably a multiverse version of the character, and if you do that, then maybe that version of the character is in love with, and maybe even married to, as and they're king and queen of Wakanda with Storm, and maybe that's where you get Cynthia Erivo's version of Storm, and that then merges into the secret
Right.
timeline. That could work. I mean, I'm now with that in mind. Let's kind of switch focus to that Black Panther story. So, of course, there's rumors out there that potentially Marvel is looking to finally, recast T'Challa for the upcoming Black Panther appearances. We know there's a third Black Panther that is in the works, and will feature Denzel Washington, which was something that he unknowingly. I mean, I don't know how he unknowingly he just spoiled for everybody, and then he apologized to Ryan Coogler for it. But we know there's Ironheart is gonna potentially feature some cameos from the cast of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. But with a third movie in the works, with these two Avengers movies coming up, we're gonna get more multiversal variants of a lot of these characters, I'm sure, in Doomsday and Secret Wars. I wonder if this casting is now the time to do it, really, because I personally am somebody who thought they should have done it before we even got the second Black Panther movie. Like, they should have kept the T'Challa character going forward, and the best
Yeah.
way to honor Chadwick Boseman would have been to keep to basically take the mantle, and then have somebody come in who can just go and take the character to another level and honor the work that Chadwick Boseman had done to kind
Right.
of, just basically introduce us to one of the best characters that the MCU has had to date. What do you guys think? Do you think this is even a good idea? I'll start with you, Liz. What do you think the idea of finally recasting this role, is it timely? Is it a good idea? Should they even think about it? What are your thoughts?
I understand why they would think about it. I don't again, I've said this before. I think it's a little too soon. However, because we are going the variant route, we are going the multi-world route, I could see there being something where it's not like that, because he has died. We have celebrated him in the
Yeah,
second film. We have we it's not like they're just going to all of a sudden be like, oh, JK, he's alive. So the only way it would work is if he was a variant from another
Exactly.
world. So in
Avengers
that
Doomsday.
regard, I'm okay with it. In that regard, I'm
yeah,
okay with it because that's not our T'Challa. That's the other world's T'Challa. So that totally makes sense to
Exactly.
me.
Where it says right there.
Um, in the other hand, to me, if you're gonna try and bring back our T'Challa, and then to me, you'd have to start completely from scratch. So recast the whole fucking thing, start with a brand new at a brand new timeline, a brand new story.
I mean,
So
that's what
those
they're
those are
thinking
the
about
only
doing.
yeah, those are only the two realistic ways that they can do it. I would love John David Washington. It would make sense. I think this might be the first thing that he would work with his father on, which would be kind of cool if that were to be the case. But again, I I'm okay with it in the sense of that's where we are in the MCU timeline. So to your point, Dan, it does make sense now. It didn't make sense back
yeah,
then. And it was too soon. It was too raw. Frankly, I think they came out with Black Panther 2 way too soon after his passing anyway, but they wanted to address his passing, so I understand that as well.
yeah,
It's a tricky thing. It's a fine line. Um and I think seeing all the things that people were saying, I think they should have kind of put that in the headline. They should have said he'd be coming back as a variant. Whereas now people are like, how dare you recast? And you already said goodbye to him. So how would that even work? You can't bury the lead like that. Like, you really
Yeah.
need to kind of be a little more specific with your wording of these
But the
headlines,
thing is
knowing
that
that it's
involves
people are.
clickbait, rage bait,
Well,
they
but
get more
again,
clicks,
the 90, I would say 75% of people that see these stories go by the headline alone. So that's where all this rage and anger is coming from, is because this is how you presented it to everybody. So
yeah.
I understand
Well,
it.
I mean, to those of you guys just listening to the show, potentially, I want to read the quote here in the article from Jeff Snyder. He was I think either talking to or reporting through the direct, and basically what he said was, with Marvel reshuffling the deck in advance of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, and Robert Downey Jr. coming back not as Iron Man but as Doctor Doom, I'm told that the door is firmly open for T'Challa to be recast via the magic of the multiverse. So again,
Right.
very specifically calling out the idea that you bring back
Hmm.
T'Challa not through like, maybe bringing him back from the dead or like the Lazarus pit or anything like that, but literally
Wrong
maybe another
franchise.
timeline. Well, I'm just saying, maybe
I
the
know what
Marvel
you mean. I
equivalent
know what
of
you
that.
mean.
With that in mind, though, John, do you think like even bringing him back that way, do you think that's gonna feel like a betrayal to a lot of the fans who are like, great, like we did all of that in the last movie, and to kind of like put a bow on it, all of a sudden there's a
I
T'Challa
mean,
back in
we
the story.
fucking already got like Toby and Andrew as other Spider-Man. It's like whatever. Like I understand he's dead and that's sad, but it's like I've said this many a times before now. Unfortunately, I never knew the man personally, so I don't know how he was as a man. But I have a strong feeling with how much he loved this character, how much he loved playing him. I'm gonna take a wild guess, and from what I've gathered from what his family has said, what co-stars have said, that he's not the type of man that would have wanted this character to die with him because it's too important of a character. And I've said like when somebody gets cast to play a character, you're not the be all and end all. You're just a part of the history now. There's this character existed far before you and it's going to exist far after you. So I was always open with them recasting even from the beginning. I would have preferred M'Baku play being the next Black Panther. Not obviously not T'Challa, but like just my boy got shortchanged in terms of that
Dude,
because
they should have.
M'Baku is
Mbaku was so
fucking the
good,
goat.
so
Anyway,
good.
Yeah,
One of
I've
my
been saying
favorite
that
but
since the
MCU
beginning
honestly,
characters.
they
too.
could do
Yeah.
this. Like maybe like Winston Duke plays another version, a multiversal
Oh,
T'Challa.
I would love that.
That because
That would
Yes.
be
Winston Duke would
interesting.
be
Yeah.
that would
I
be
do love
awesome.
him.
But whatever they decide to
Shit,
do,
Michael B. Jordan can come back and play a different, play that
you
a
can
different
play
variant,
T'Challa. Yeah.
That'd be great for me.
But I think whatever they decide to
I don't know
do,
about that one, but
whatever they decide to do, I think it'll be okay. I don't think people need to because I saw friends that are like, oh, this is a betrayal. This is fucking terrible. It's like he's a character. Like if we can get 700,000 Batmen, we can get a second Black Panther. Now I understand it's the same like timeline, the same thing. But as people said, like it's they're already thinking about soft rebooting it after Secret Wars. So it's
I
like
mean,
we're to
yeah,
incorporate Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and all this other shit into
yeah.
one universe so it actually makes sense again.
Hmm.
So,
And look,
it's
it looks like they're a lot further along the process than even we necessarily realized. Just reading the headline and the first paragraph of the just talking about, hey, they're thinking about recasting. No, they actually might be actively looking to do this because one of the other things that was in that same article in the direct was Jeff Snyder said, I heard that an actor was actually offered the role this past fall, a couple of months after Disney's big reveal at Comic Con, but they turned it down, not wanting to jeopardize their career momentum by stepping into Boseman's gigantic shoes, which may be too big to fill even for Hollywood's most talented black actors. He continued to say, although it remains unclear if the character will appear in the upcoming Avengers, Jeff Snyder believes that the newly cast T'Challa will lead Black Panther 3.
I think
Now,
that would be dumb because then, as Liz said, it would just be weird and awkward. And I'm just again, I'm talking about it from a
yeah,
storytelling perspective, not even from an emotional perspective. It would be so fucking weird because it's not like because it's not outlandish enough like with comics. Like, okay, Barry Allen comes back after 23 years. Okay, yeah, sure, Gucci, whatever. So like that makes sense because he was in the Speed Force and da, 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 da. Like you can it's just the way that they like went so far to celebrate this character and to celebrate what Chadwick was in and out of universe. They went so like Ryan Coogler was emotionally destroyed after Boseman passed away. So I don't think that they would have a T'Challa. I don't think they would resurrect him because, again, logistically, I just don't think that that would make sense. Nor would I think they like pluck a multiverse variant and be like, "You're our Black Panther now," because that's just again weird and awkward, and not even from because I'm on the fence of like the whole betrayal thing of emotionally. because I'm neither here nor there because I don't really like the Black Panther franchise that much. They're like okay. I don't think they're like God's greatest gift to humanity like a lot of other people do. But it's mainly about a representation thing, and I'm not black, so it's like you can
Right.
if you love it and you want that representation, awesome, that's great, and I'm happy you have it. But it's just like, but if we're talking about the emotional burden, I'm not really the right person to talk about this because I don't really care all that much. But I just think as someone from like a guy who watches a lot of movies and watches a lot of genre movies and franchises, from a logic point of view, it would just be too awkward, way too awkward from a storytelling perspective. It would
Um,
not work, even for comic book bullshit that you can make up to make him come back. It
well,
would. I just think it would be too awkward with what you did with Wakanda
I,
Forever.
I hear what you're saying, John, but I think my counter to that would be if they introduce him within one of these Avengers movies and he's a variant from another world, you can address a lot of the way the fans would feel about it
Right.
within the course of the movies by saying, all right, he's an outsider, now he's stuck in our world because all these worlds somehow combine, whatever, however
Whatever
we
it
end
is,
up closing off the multiverse.
I
And
can see that working.
he has to like earn his way into any sense of respect and kind of the place that he held in his own world, and so he won't
That I
necessarily
could.
take on the mantle like immediately, but I'm
Yes,
saying you build him up over the course of these
that
Avengers
could
movies,
work. That could
and
work.
then like even at the start of Black Panther 3 he's not that, but then you
What I'm
let him
not
earn it,
saying is like what I don't want that I could see working like
yeah,
builds up in Doomsday Secret Wars, introduce the variant, and then have him lead and then almost Black Panther 3 being a spin-off of that
yeah.
and continue that variant. What I don't want them to do is have complete no setup whatsoever. Maybe he's like a variant in the background and then he gets his own movie. That's what I don't want
No,
to
no,
happen.
right, I don't
Because
think
again,
that, yeah,
logically, that wouldn't make sense. But if you build
yeah,
him up properly, because I don't want them to
yeah,
just pluck him here and put him there. Here, you have a movie now. Again, logically, I
yeah,
just don't think that would work.
yeah,
So it's just like,
well,
I don't
yeah,
like that. But if again, what you're saying, that I agree with. That I
yeah.
think you can make that work properly.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? With that in mind, though, Liz, as the article describes here, they already offered this role to somebody, and he turned it down
Hmm.
because they didn't think it was the best idea for them to kind of be put in a position to follow up on Chadwick
Yeah, I
Boseman
mean,
playing the
we're
character.
it's almost going to become like a almost
Yeah,
the best thing I can equate it to is like the Snyder cultists. There are going to be people that are just going to destroy whoever attempts to fill the shoes. And again, we're t- I can like I'm fine with it if it's a variant. It makes sense for the storyline. It makes sense if it's a completely different T'Challa. It's not our T'Challa, but some people won't be able to make that disconnect. Some people won't be able to see the difference there. So they're gonna be out for blood, and it's gonna be really stupid and ugly. Which is why, again, I think it's too soon to be talking about going back to the Black Panther storyline. But they have to keep things moving. They don't want to just drop this part of the franchise completely. So they have to figure it out. But either way, there's going to be growing pains, and there are going to be a lot of people that are unhappy. But I agree with John. Chadwick Boseman would not want that part to die with him. He was so proud to be a part of that. He was so proud to get this storyline into the MCU. Again, it's for the culture. It's for a whole other fan base. I saw it in theaters 6 times. It was one of the first Marvel films that I kept going back to see. It means a hell of a lot to me. So I understand they have to do what they need to do in order to keep it as a part of the MCU and keep it as a part of the fold. But it's going to be a fine line that they have to walk, and they have to do things thoughtfully and but also in a way that makes sense. So
Hmm.
uh,
yeah.
we'll see what happens. But again, I would love John David Washington. Somebody else said Aldous Hodge, who has a connection with Marvel already, so that would be great
Also a
too.
DC
Who
connection.
did he
Yeah,
play again
Yeah.
in
He was
Marvel?
in Agents of Shield. Aldous Hodge was in
he
Agents.
was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No wonder I
yeah.
don't
So
care.
he
No
would
wonder.
I love him. He would be great.
I
So
loved him
I'm
as
again,
Hawkman,
Let's
but
get
yeah,
yeah.
him as
And
Hawkman.
also perfectly happy with
yeah.
M'Baku coming hello, with M'Baku being a
I
variant
mean,
or
just Winston. He was
but
like
he
honestly, he
wouldn't
was
make
my
sense
favorite
because he's
character.
still M'Baku in our timeline. So again, give me Michael B.
Fuck it,
Jordan
just
back.
pull in Eddie Murphy. I don't give a shit.
No,
Fuck
oh my
that.
God,
I
stop.
want two
Give me
times the
Michael B. Jordan
wasted, two
back. He's
times the
already been
quality.
multiple Marvel characters anyway, so give me Michael B. Jordan back. I'm totally fine with that.
I mean,
You know,
look, I was gonna ask you guys because look, somebody, do you care to
That's fair.
speculate who was offered the role and they said this is not a good
Maybe they
career
want to go with
opportunity
someone
for
like
them?
Chosen Jacobs or something.
I mean,
Like
it could
someone
have been John David Washington. It could have been Aldous Hodge. It could have been some of these people that have already been named here in the chat. Um,
I'm almost thinking,
it could
was
have
it
been your
Aaron
new Green
Pierre? And
Lantern.
he's,
It could, you know,
I'm
like
just like,
Yeah.
I could have been Aaron Pierre, like exactly. But
Yeah.
I mean, he was already in a movie that took place in like an African, setting, so it works.
it could have been Denzel Washington, and Denzel Washington could have said, I'm happy to be in the film, but not that role."
I don't
you
think
know?
they would have.
I know. Again,
He
he's a
literally.
variant.
I think
He
he
could
just
be.
turned.
He could
I
be.
think today's his birthday. Actually, I think he just
He's
turned
a
70.
variant, so he
did
can.
he? Oh,
We
nice.
could be any version. It could be any version of T'Challa. So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, also in the article, they talk about how Ryan Coogler is going to actively be involved in the recasting process
Of
to
course.
basically to ensure that everything will be handled with the utmost care and in consultation with Boseman's family. So Marvel did, like, it says in the article, they previously ruled out the idea of recasting, but now that they're moving forward with the story, I think they
Mhm.
probably realized that long term, the way where they went with Wakanda Forever was maybe not the most sustainable route for like what they were trying to do with the story. And of course, the T'Challa character I think is too good of a character to just let it sit on the sidelines the rest of time. With that in mind, of course, you guys have mentioned it. There will be potentially some backlash around this. And so I pulled up this article on CBR as well, where they pulled in some social media reactions. Look, I for one think that's a lot of the overreaction is gonna be more limited to us super fans who live and die and breathe this stuff. I think the average person's gonna go to a movie and if they like the movie and say, oh, they recast the character, oh, okay, yeah, and then if you enjoy the movie and the character's done well and you get a great actor, like, look, whoever they bring into this role is gonna need to be like a Don Cheadle when he stepped into Rhodey, and he's gonna need to hit the ground running and immediately try to differentiate himself from like Chadwick Boseman's performance, but at the same time honor what he did and kind of build on top of it, but not try to like basically be Chadwick Boseman. But you need a talented actor all around to do that. Now, with that in mind, so far, people are reacting in all sorts of different ways. Like, I'll go through a couple of these reactions here. So, this is the first one. It was like, there was a whole effing sequel about honoring his legacy. What are you effing thinking? So, clearly, release Coyote versus Acme. I mean, okay, so they do not like the idea. They're still campaigning for that movie. Then Chloe slash Cheryl says, this is a really shitty thing to do. Hopefully, they reconsider. Um, it's again the
Bro, how
same
many
idea.
flags do you have in your fucking username? Like, goddamn.
All the different causes that she cares about. Then Slice of Anime saying they got the kid. Just wait 10 years and you'll have him back. Until then, make other characters that audiences like. It's the point, but I mean, still, that kid isn't like he's meant to be what, like 7 years old in the second movie or something. Like he's not that old. Like you're gonna get a teenage T'Challa at best, and it's not
Yeah,
the
I
same
think he was
thing
5 or 6. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I mean, the people have speculated maybe they'll like, run time through him like the way they did with Ant-Man in the next Avengers movie.
Right.
Uh, I
Well,
don't know
again,
if that's what
you're
they're gonna
never
do.
going to please everybody, and the
Yeah.
people that are really going to have the hardest time with it are the people that have only ever seen Black Panther. They haven't watched any of the
Right.
other TV shows, they haven't watched any of the other films, so
Yeah, like Black
they don't
Panther was a
understand.
character in media for a long time before
Right. So
Yeah.
Chadwick Boseman.
they can't understand the variant connection. They can't understand the multi-universe thing. So those are the people that are going to freak out the most. But at the same time, they're going to go see the movie. So what?
But they also didn't read the article.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Hosea saying in the chat that hey, T'Challa is too important of a character to not recast, which I agree. I think it's the
Absolutely.
fact that
Absolutely.
yeah, it's you cannot just let that character sit on the sidelines, right? And then RJ here, I think Resident Justice. That's actually a really good name. One of the few good names you'll find on social media. Saying ultimately the right decision and one that should have been made back in 2021. They always should have recast the role, much like Hosea agreeing that hey, it's too important of a character. I think yeah, we're on the same page there. Now with that in mind, we got by the way Antonio rejoining the chat here. Thank you for coming back on. Saying there's a video where Christopher Nolan's talked about in the Tenet press tour that John David Washington, who could potentially be our next T'Challa, was potentially going to be a Green Lantern, and Christopher Nolan endorsed the idea. So that's cool. Um, and Caleb saying, look, like saying Chadwick Boseman is the only T'Challa there can ever be is like Jared Leto can be the only Joker. I don't know if that's an apples to oranges comparison necessarily, but
Yeah,
I see the spirit of
no.
what you're saying. But look, to anybody who is really not into the idea of recasting T'Challa, I'll just point out this one line from the story where Jeff Snyder said that he's been told the door is firmly open for T'Challa to be recast via the magic of the multiverse. That
Yes.
pretty much is the key point here. That they're not going to try to bring back T'Challa from the dead. They're not going to try to age up, his son. They're
I mean, they
simply
They're
are
not
going
gonna
doing
to
pull a
bring
Marvel
another
Jonathan
Zombies, but
Kent
version.
with T'Challa's kid,
they
because that
they
would
are
be fucking stupid.
well, listen, they are doing Marvel Zombies, but that would be in really poor taste.
Wow.
No.
Ouch.
I'm just
That's
saying.
Damn.
saying.
Ouch.
Just saying. They put it out there, not me.
I mean, Enterprising saying there's an Illuminati variant of T'Challa in the comics.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
I know that we were all speculating if we were going to get that in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, but we didn't. So,
But no, we just got, Mr. Fantastic turning into Miss Piscetti, and, Professor X getting fucking yeeted again. Whoops-a-doodles.
Yeah, I
That's
have
another
very
great one
mixed
from
feelings
John.
about that movie still to this day. But hey, let's kind of bring this full circle. If you guys had to recast T'Challa, or in this case, recasting is maybe not even the right word. If you had to cast a new T'Challa, do you have a name in mind that you would think is the best?
I have
pick?
one.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler.
Come on, I would like on a more serious note.
I
if
really
it
On a
were
serious
to-
can't with
note,
you. I
well,
can't
I
with
mean,
you.
honestly, there's a lot. I think Trevante Rhodes could be a good one if they're going for an older T'Challa. He could be really good.
It's actually that's a pretty good
Well,
one.
like I said, if it's a variant, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I think
you're
you
really
guys
not
mentioned something with
beholden
John David
to.
Washington, Aldous Hodge. I mean, Michael B. Jordan being T'Challa. That's definitely an interesting thing to do.
Would be hot.
I don't think they would do that, but that would be a cool idea. Winston Duke just playing two roles. I wouldn't mind that. But like,
That would be that. I mean, they could make it really funny. That's for sure.
Can you imagine when he walks up and he's like M'Baku and then they stare each other down and then it's like all of a sudden the thing that where it creates like this weird situation where obviously he's T'Challa in one world and M'Baku in the other, especially given how the first Black Panther movie went. But look, Antonio Baker puts it nicely here. Let Ryan Coogler cook. Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thanks for adding to the collection.
I love
But
it.
as I was saying,
love it.
let Ryan Coogler cook, but please do not have some time jump that
Yeah.
will mess up the movie before the movie even comes out. I do not think they're gonna do that. I
No, I
think
don't
they're
think
most
so.
likely
They
just
already
gonna
did that
bring
with
in.
Endgame.
Yeah. Again,
Let's
they're
not have
already
another
fucking with
one.
variants. They can't be fucking with timelines on top of it. It's the variants
The
are
sacred
gonna be enough for
timeline.
people.
Well, yeah, I think they're.
You know what?
What
You
they're
know
gonna-
would be funny.
Yeah, it's
You know
sacred
what would
until
be
it's
really
not.
fucking funny now that he's like kind of wiped clean of everything. Bring back Jonathan Majors as Black Panther.
Come on, dude, really? Anyway,
That would be a fucking crazy thing to do.
And that's why they're not calling you for any ideas,
Exactly.
there, Johnny boy.
John is full of terrible ideas today. But Enterprising was asking an interesting question before we finish up MCU Weekly. They were asking how young should the X-Men be is the question, because we were talking about, of course, Cynthia Erivo wants to play Storm and potentially
Yeah.
that's her dream
True.
role.
I was thinking of that.
I am uncanny X-Men, 90s X-Men all day, every day. So I don't think any of them, they shouldn't be a set age limit. They should all have the various ages that they were. They're all in different in time. They're all in different places in their lives.
I think some should be vets, some should be new. I think if that would be
a full circle moment, though. I wouldn't mind
next
that.
time, baby. Let's
next
go.
time, baby. I'm gonna be Black Panther, baby. Yeah, that would be so good.
That would be funny, but I think personally, what they should do, they should have like the first class, like Beast, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Angel, you have those guys be like the vets, and then you have like guys
Yep.
like Gambit and Rogue. You have like those types of characters be like younger, and then you can have like and then give Wolverine a rest. Just have him just like he's in his room. Like that's
Yeah.
it. That's
He's on another mission fighting the Hulk over
um
here.
and so, I think just not have him there. And that but like do stuff like that, like have like the first class be like around the block, and
Yeah.
then they're kind of like meant or like and then like have like an older Iceman and then stuff like that. Even though he's kind of like the younger brother, just like of the group, just like have him be like slightly like he's like kind of the intermediary. Like you have like the mentors be like in their like mid to late 30s, and then maybe he's like in his early 30s or late 20s, and then have the rest of them be like early teens or sorry, late teens, early 20s, depending on the character. I think they should do something like that. That would be really cool.
Yeah, because Enterprising in the chat was saying, how old are our vets then? In their 30s, or like
Wolverine's 200, but
That's
but
true.
and yeah, well, Beast, I believe Beast and Professor X are the oldest. At least that's how they've been kind of portrayed. So yeah, Professor X in his 60s,
Mhm.
Beast in his 50s, and then the other ones, yeah, like early 40s probably, late 30. Yeah, early 40s I
Yeah,
think would be the
yeah.
best because they're supposed to be like parental figures. They're supposed to have kind of been through it
I will say
already.
this
They're supposed
though.
to be kind of hardened.
One of the key things about the X-Men has always been that they're kind of set around like, the World War II era, the older generation. I'm like, if you bring them in from another timeline, do they also sort of have an alternate history to them, or are you gonna go with a version where they're like, for example, Magneto, uh, he grew up not in a camp in World War II, but instead of being somebody who hates the Nazis, there's some other tragedy, some other
I
Holocaust that
feel like you
he.
can't.
I'm just
Nando v
thinking,
Movies had a really good video on this. I'll be like,
yeah,
you have to stick with the Holocaust thing because that's the
Yeah,
only thing to make that character work. So just have it be like mutants don't age as fast, or maybe he found a time portal. Like you could do like a million different things to have that work and have
yeah,
yeah.
him be like not super old, like Ian McKellen levels of old, but like you could do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things because the basis of Magneto's character is he literally became the very thing he sort of destroyed. He is literally mutant Hitler. That's the whole point. So the fact, and if you take that away from his character, it wouldn't work as
yeah.
well.
Then what
You
do you have?
have
Yeah,
to make that,
No, I
it
hear
has
you.
to
there
I'm
be a
just
needs to
Jewish
be
saying.
that
survivor of the
motivation.
Holocaust.
Then I'm saying, how does the mechanics of this soft reboot work? Does that mean
You
that
can
all of
think
a
of
sudden?
fucking anything. Time
Because no,
portal.
but
Boom.
also I'm just saying that. Well, yes, Caleb was saying time machine, but I'm just think about it though. If this Magneto does kind of, or his backstory still include the Holocaust, then you're still talking like, look, the 1940s were a lot far, like long. It's been 20 years since the first X-Men movie came out. Back then, 1940s were 60 years ago. Now the 1940s are 80 years ago. Do you really want an 80-year-old Professor X and
No, that's what
Magneto?
I'm saying. Like, maybe
I'm
what they can do is like they introduce X. They introduce like the
yeah.
Magneto, Professor X thing, like in like the 60s, and then they have their thing. They have their skirmish. They make their
You
own,
mean like make these period move films because in the new
make them
timeline
period
they were part of the
films,
past of the
and
MCU,
then
except
have
yeah,
them
okay.
make like for this before it like gets rebooted, have them like, oh, it on this other world it took place in like the 60s and 70s, and then due to multiversal time hullabaloo, then
Yep.
you can make it so that, oh, somehow Magneto still a Holocaust survivor, and Professor X got on, our world now, and now they have X-Men that are, that are younger and all this other stuff. But yeah, I think like just make it period movies because like I feel like that's too integral to Magneto's character to shy like, oh, he was, it was the fucking I don't know. I don't even know what you would replace. There's
No,
nothing
I'm
like.
I'm saying you maybe do an alternate history of this different world. It's hard to. You can either do what you suggested, where either these are period movies, like what they did with the second trilogy of films, like they took place in the 60s and 70s and stuff, uh, or you have them sort of start off there, but then they get pushed into our timeline. Because for example, Fantastic Four is in retro futuristic sort of a film, but it takes place in a different world. So while it looks like the 60s, it doesn't mean necessarily in their world that it is the 60s. It just looks like to us it's the 60s. So maybe you do something like that because they're coming from a different timeline. The way things played out there was different from us. You know what I mean? Like the time doesn't have to match up. Either you do it that way or you change up the history of MCU proper, and then you'll have to do the whole these movies take place in the past because like I said, you can't really have an 80-year-old Professor X to kick off the mutant saga. That seems a little it's
Bring
hard for me to
Patrick
kind of
Stewart
reconcile
back.
that. Oh well, I mean, he's definitely aged
Poor
into the
guy.
role.
Yeah, he's
Um,
yeah. I don't think
I
he
mean,
wants to do
Enterprising
that
saying
anymore.
that Logan did go to war with Cap in some iterations. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see those crossovers. Maybe that's what they do here. Maybe you just sort of,
Uh,
maybe this is not so much a soft reboot. It's more of a much harder reboot than we realize because
Yeah,
they had to
I
reconcile
mean,
so many different things.
we've already got a Gambit ready to go. So uh,
he made a name for himself.
I mean, if we've got a Storm now with Cynthia, we've already got a Gambit on deck. So let's just fucking do the thing. Why not? Let's just go balls to the wall here.
Yeah. I mean, and also, I'm guessing that they're gonna want to cast, actors who are much younger than what we got before. Because, for
Yeah,
example, as Antonio is pointing out, I think Sadie Sink was being considered for Jean Grey recently. That was the rumor that was
Yeah,
going around.
I
Um,
hate a young Jean Grey though. I really do. But
yeah,
yeah.
it's so if
Brings out
you,
some creeper aspects with Professor X. Whoops-a-doodles.
mm.
Another whoops-a-doodles. Yeah. I mean, it's
Well,
literally
Rogan Magneto,
comic
man.
book canon
So
that Professor X was perving on a minor Jean Grey. So,
well,
yeah,
so is Magneto with Rogue too. So it's not great. That's why we're sticking
indubitably.
with the
by the
uncanny.
way, Antonio, is Scott Eastwood in his 30s? I feel like he was in his 30s like
Yeah.
10 years ago.
No,
I mean,
he is. He
he
He's
is.
is?
38.
And
He's
he would
38.
be
38.
Okay.
great. He would be a great Cyclops, honestly. He really would.
I remember Nando V Movies has a really good video on like who he cast. Like I know he had like Tom Hopper as
Yeah.
Cyclops. I
I
think
like Garrett.
although he
How
can't
about
do it now, but Matthew McFadden as Professor X and
Garrett Hedlund would be good.
yeah.
We've got a couple options out there.
I
I
would
mean,
say
you just need
the
an
only
all-American
man I
white boy.
want
We've
if
got
they
him in
do have
spades.
to make another Wolverine,
That's a good
the
point,
only
though.
person I would want is
Magneto,
Jared
Steve
Kiso.
Rogers.
Jared Kiso is the only man for the job, and I will die on that hill. So, but that's just me.
Well,
Get
I
an
mean, I
actual
think
Canadian. Don't bring in an Australian. Get that the fuck out of here. Bring in a real Canadian for
dude, I
Wolverine.
don't know. It's gonna be hard to top what Hugh Jackman did, quite frankly. But
I know.
but
There are
but
going to
look,
be a lot of people saying you can't recast that either. So let's just go. Let's just go for it, gang. Let's just go for it.
I do appreciate though that they're looking to cast, like if you're talking about Sadie Sink as being sort of that reference point for the age group that you want to go with for like
Mm-hmm.
Jean Grey and like the
Early
Cyclops and
20s.
stuff, then you're looking at basically Spider-Man, right? Like Tom Holland. That's the generation that they're going to be a part of. So if that is anything to go by, of course they haven't officially announced any X-Men movie yet, even though we know we're going to get one post Avengers, Secret Wars, but nothing is official. Kevin Feige hasn't said that. We don't have a release date. They still have plenty of
Matthew
times to make this.
McConaughey as Cyclops.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Maybe in like
Yeah, then we'll get Woody
2005.
Harrelson as Professor X. Give me a
Oh
break.
my
Oh
god, that would be
god.
I
amazing. Just
can't.
like
Please
Professor X, like
stop.
fucking just balls to
You
the
know what?
wall
Then we'll pull
high
in
all the
Ted
time.
Danson as Magneto. Let's just fuck around and find
Jared
out here.
Kiso, he's famous from Letterkenny.
Letterkenny.
Is the main thing
So
that he's
good.
from.
Yeah.
So good.
Antonio's saying maybe Magneto is a grandchild of Holocaust survivors. Maybe you could do with something that's a
Okay,
little
Again,
yeah,
it
different
that's
that
just
way.
I
fair.
don't think
It's
that
not as
would work.
visceral though.
No,
No.
it wouldn't work. It still
It
wouldn't
won't have
work.
the same.
But
Yeah.
look, the problem, that issue of the time thing is not even an issue that has nothing to do with the MCU. That's just a simple passage of time situation, right? Like that's why when they did the X-Men First Class and everything, they decided to then make those movies like period pieces, 70s, 60s, like even the 80s to a certain degree. Like they did not want to do those movies in the present day like the original trilogy did, because they were like, well, if you want to stay true to the whole Holocaust origin of Magneto, then these characters, we can't set them in the present day. I mean, obviously they went with a younger Professor X anyway, but I'm just saying Fox made the decision to make them period pieces. I feel like if that's the direction they're gonna go in here, then maybe in the Mutant Saga we sort of just change up the MCU's history a little bit, and like you guys have been suggesting, maybe the Wolverine runs across Captain America, Magneto might have met Steve Rogers back in the day when Steve Rogers was maybe the one who liberated the camp that he was being held at. Like you could do those kind of crossovers and still have like Captain America, the first Avenger, and those kind of movies still be canon to the MCU, but then all of a sudden the history of the MCU is now different because the X-Men have existed, and you sort of have these stories that take place in the present day, and then you have stories of the X-Men, the OG team, and then the younger team that then eventually becomes like the veterans of the present day. Maybe you do it that way. I'm just suggesting. I mean, look, this is the kind of problem that Kevin Feige and company have to solve. It's not for us to solve, but speculating just from where we stand today, I think there have options. Unfortunately, there's not many good options, but because you have to kind of bend backwards to figure a lot of this stuff out. No, come on, seriously. Yeah, Adam Sandler can play everybody in the New Mutant Saga, but
everybody, let's go. I gotta fight the Hulk. We gotta fight the Hulk, guys. Come on, Professor X, we gotta do this. Schlink, let's go, guys.
Northern Alberta, Canada. Sorry. Well, you know what? I will say this though, it's gonna be pretty hard to do Storm better than Halle Berry did. And as good as Cynthia Erivo might be.
Hey, because as we remember,
would it be
what
harder
happens
to do it
what happens when a
than
frog
Halle
gets struck by
Berry?
lightning? What happens to everything else? What a great line. I mean, I like the original X-Men, but oof, some of that dialogue.
I'm just saying, I mean, it's hard to replace Halle Berry, but anyway.
Is
Look,
it though?
Yes,
it though?
yes, it is.
She was
Yes,
also
it
a
is.
Bond girl, Dan.
I will
Apparently that's a
unabashedly
big
die on that
fucking
hill. I
thing.
do
Apparently
not
that's really
care.
important. Apparently
I do
that's
not care. You
important.
know what? The 90s, the Bond movies might not have been great, but the Bond girls certainly were. And with that in
Denise
mind,
Richards was a Bond girl, okay? So it's not, you're not really.
that one was hard to believe because she was meant to be playing like some the smartest person in the room.
Like, oh, Denise Richards.
I was like,
playing a scientist.
not anything against Denise Richards.
Get the fuck out of here with the Bond girls. Stop it.
Dude, the Bond girls in the 90s were fantastic. You had Michelle Yeoh, you had Denise Richards, you had Famke Janssen. Of course, you mentioned Halle Berry.
They weren't good characters, but they were nice to look at. Like
that was the point. That's all they're
that was
used
the point.
for,
that was
gang.
Well, that's not.
I mean, but then again, Ana de Armas, Eva Green,
90s, but not before and after. But that's
Yeah, I think that's okay. Well,
sure,
guys, let us know.
They're gonna cast an Ugo as a fucking Bond girl next.
Well, they're gotta be hot, but it's like they're also capable characters. It's just people refuse to believe that. And that's the thing.
Let us know in the comments below what you think about the X-Men situation. How would you tackle the conundrum that is like you stay true to the origin of the X-Men and yet you make them work in the 21st century, and how do you bring them into the MCU? Would you recast T'Challa, and if so, then who would you bring in, even if it's a multiverse variant? And then of course, do you like the idea of Cynthia Erivo potentially playing the new Storm in the MCU? With that in mind, guys, of course, we'll be back with another MCU Weekly next week. DCU Daily will be back tomorrow.